Right. Our next speaker is Tammy Schenk. Tammy.
Okay. I called this segment of my memoirs From the Frying Pan into the Fire, and it takes place between 1943 and 1944. World War II raged across Europe. Destruction, death, famine, and incredible suffering spread from the Atlantic coast of France deep onto the steppes of Russia. On June 22nd, 1941, Hitler's army, called the Wehrmacht, began its drive to the east by invading Ukraine on its way to Moscow. There was little resistance since Ukrainians believed the German army would liberate them from Russian communist rule. Following Stalin's scorched earth policy, the Red Army destroyed large areas of Ukrainian land and resources before they were taken over by the Germans. They burned crops, blew up bridges, killed whatever livestock, horses, chickens, ducks, sheep, or goats, that they could not haul off for their own use. When the Russians subsequently drove the Nazis out of Ukraine in 1943, the Wehrmacht in return destroyed everything the Soviets had not. These were bad times for the Ukrainian population. Between starvation, deportation, or death during bombings, it is said that nearly 10 million Ukrainians, including 600,000 Ukrainian Jews, were killed during World War II. We were familiar with the Soviet cruelty and total disregard for the welfare of the population of Ukraine. On the other hand, this being 1939 to 1944, there was no internet, no cell phones, actually no phones at all, no TV in rural Ukraine. Radios were a rarity, even in larger cities. News spread slowly, so we had little information about Hitler or the Nazis, and it wasn't until much later when we became aware of Hitler's intentions. The time had come for our family to make a major decision. Do we stay and continue to suffer under Stalin's rule and inhumane living conditions, or do we take the courageous step to escape the Soviet stranglehold, and flee with the retreating Nazis in the hope of escaping their clutches once we were in the Western Europe? We were not Nazi sympathizers, but simply wanted a chance for a better life and freedom from Soviet oppression. We had that choice because of a singular circumstance. My uncle Sergei was married to Erika, who was of Volga German descent. During the rule of Catherine the Great, a German princess who married the Russian Tsar Peter the Great, thousands of German nationals emigrated to Russia between 1763 and 1767, mainly to the Volga River Delta. There they pursued the opportunity of freedom, local self-government, and better living conditions, as promised by Catherine's manifesto. After the Russian Revolution, the Volga Germans endured increasing privations and suffered persecution from the Soviet government and its citizens. During World War II, many Volga Germans were rounded up and forcibly transported to Siberia. Some fled, others remained, my aunt's family among them. Now these German descendants were suspected by the Soviets of aiding the Nazis, and life became more dangerous every day. Uncle Sergei and my mother's youngest brother and Erika decided they had to leave with the retreating army. The Germans encouraged the Volga Germans to leave because they needed workers in the armament factories back home. My family had no German ancestry, but found it judicious to find one. There was no telling if perhaps a child had been born to a German/Ukrainian union many years ago. we had to escape from the Soviet Union. Our experience with the occupying German army had actually been a positive one. The 2 doctors stationed in our home were kind, generous young men who missed their families and often played with us children and shared their food rations with us, and we were very grateful. The wrenching decision to leave behind family, friends, and our homeland was made knowing we would probably never see our loved ones again. Our parents packed 2 suitcases with personal clothing and a few items from the meager possessions we had. A metal double bed and a wicker footlocker filled with some linen, dishes, cutlery, and a couple of pots and pans was all we could bring for 2 adults and 2 children. I still have the sturdy 70-year-old basket as a reminder of things past. Departure day arrived in August 1943. Our baggage was loaded into the wagon car of the train assigned to us and 3 other families. We bid goodbye to heartbroken parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, friends, and neighbors. Before leaving the house, we followed the Russian custom where everyone has to sit down for good luck and to ensure a return. The tradition persists to this day. It must be true because my parents were able to visit my grandparents in the mid-1980s before grandmother and grandfather passed away. My sister and I returned in 2004 to see cousins and their families. What a wonderful reunion we had, but that will be a future story. Our train left Kramatorsk in August 43, loaded with Nazi soldiers and us refugees. It would take 3 months to cross into Poland and to arrive at our first destination in Lodz. The trip was a nightmare. The Red Army was in hot pursuit and bombarded the tracks daily. The train was sidelined repeatedly, and we would leave the wagon to hide in the fields or forests. Sometimes it would be days before the tracks were repaired and we could resume the journey. Special troop trains had priority over ours, and we'd be stuck for even longer. Luckily, it was summer and early fall, so we did not have to worry about freezing to death and could scrounge around the villages or countryside for food and not suffer as much as later refugees did. Upon arrival in Lodz, we were housed in a refugee camp, and my father and uncle assigned work in the city. The refugee camp was located near the Chelmo concentration camp, which held Jewish prisoners until the authorities decided to which extermination camp they could be taken. Rumors frequently spread through our camp that refugees from Ukraine would suffer the same fate as the Jews, or to be sent to Siberia. After a couple of months, our families were moved to an apartment building in city center where we shared our apartment with 2 or 3 other families. The large rooms were divided by blankets strung up on clotheslines. We shared a kitchen and the 1 bathroom, but it was much better than the refugee camp, so we were happy. The German army prepared to evacuate from Poland, and our families were once again on the move, this time to West Germany. My father and uncle were skilled workers and were hired by Telefunken, a manufacturer of transmitters and radio sets before the war. During World War II, they produced vacuum tubes, transmitters, radio relay systems, and radio directional finders for the German air defense. We arrived in Ulm during the autumn of 1944.